Welcome, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Lependorf, Executive Director of the John Cage Trust. Here in the John Cage Trust, there's our piano right over there. And I'm really excited about today's program. We have had Paul Lazar and also Annie Parson here now from Big Dance Theater in residence with us developing a new work. Paul's been developing it with, I think, probably a little healthy constructive criticism from, Anne Carson's just come in, from Annie B. And it's just been great fun. I will admit that I have been, I don't think I have to admit it, I'll just say, proclaim that I have been a big dance theater groupie for many years. I
Oh,
think I've seen most everything over the past bunch of years since I first found out about them quite a while ago. And let me tell you a little bit about them and then I'll introduce our two guests. So Paul Lazar and Annie B. Parson, together with Molly Hickok, started Big Dance Theater in 1991. So 25th anniversary. How about that? Still going on, I think. Um, they're known for their synthesis of dance music, text, and visual design, and their works have ranged from pure dance pieces to dance theater works, frequently with sources found in various texts, literature, plays, or as they write, an alchemy of wildly incongruent source material, weaving and braiding disparate strands of text and theatrical elements into multidimensional performance. Couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely true. They've developed literary works from sources as far afield as authors including Twain, Tanizaki, Euripides, Flaubert, and Carson, including the work being developed now, many others, and they use dance as both a frame and metaphor to theatricalize these writings. They have created more than 25 large-scale dance theater works, generating pieces over months and years of collaborations with various artists and a long-standing, ever-evolving family of actors, dancers, composers, and designers. I'm now going to introduce Annie B. Parson and Paul Lazar. First, Annie B., choreographer. These guys have such ginormous bios. I'm going to pick out some highlights and I hope they'll forgive me. But Annie B. has choreographed dances for people including David Byrne, David Bowie, St. Vincent, Lourdes, Mikhail Baryshnikov, Esperanza Spalding, Susan Laurie Parks, Wendy Whalen, Laurie Anderson, David Lang, Salt Peppa, Jonathan Demme, and others. And most recently, I will say I just got to see it and it was thrilling. Choreographed the new production of Tristan at the Met. I will say that I don't think one can even get a ticket if you're in New York, but it's playing on the HD broadcast for the Met, and I think on this Saturday is one. So don't miss it. It's a treat. Choreographed by Yuval Sharon, really just wonderful, and the dance is stunning, just exquisite. She's created large-scale works in repertory of Martha Graham Dance Company, Parsons, choreographed a lecture at the Duke of York Theatre, London, Candide at the Lyon Opera, The Hours at the Metropolitan Opera, on and on and on. She's worked with David Byrne for some 15 years, including dance making for his tours with Brian Eno, St. Vincent, as well as many TV appearances. She staged and choreographed the Tony Award-winning American Utopia, which ran on Broadway and toured. Has worked with Spike Lee on the documentary of American Utopia. She's also a wonderful writer and has published articles and books. Here's a recent one, which is just absolutely wonderful. I actually have given it as a gift multiple times. Highly recommend it. Grab a copy while they last to your local independent bookstore if you can. Oh my God, what else can I say? She's received an Olivier and Tony nominations, a Guggenheim Fellowship, 3 Bessie Awards, Jacob's Pillow Dance Award, USA Artist Award, Doris Duke Award, 3 Lucille Ortel nominations, and a Frankie Award. And she was honored in 2022 with a Cheetah Rivera Award for Lifetime Achievement, as well as honors from PS 122 and Dance Space. Welcome, Annie B. Parson.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
I
I'm
think that's all we have time for
I
today.
know. I mean, you need a nap. And now, of course, last but certainly not least, Paul Lazar, his one-person performance Cage Shuffle, which was partly developed here, premiered at the American Realness Festival in 2017 and continues to tour the US and Europe. He performed it at the Japan Society in the fall of 2023, where I got to enjoy it in person. It's, of course, that was a whole series of works dedicated to John Cage and his connection to Japan. And we'll talk about Cage Shuffle in a little bit. We're going to see a little excerpt as well. Outside of Big Dance Theater, Paul has directed The Barbarians by Jerry Lieblich at La Mama, for which he won an Obie Award for directing. Christina Muschiotti, Social Security at the Bushwick Star, Elephant Room at St. Anne's Warehouse for the company Rain Pan 43 in, and young Jean Lee's We're Gonna Die. He also directed a version of We're Gonna Die featuring David Byrne. At the Meltdown Festival in London, there are just too many. Another thing I remember seeing and loving, Francis McDormand doing an artist lecture by Suzanne Bocanegra at BAM. He has done just so many things. I'm not going to list them all. He's also appeared as an actor on stage in many, many things on Broadway and elsewhere, and in many, many films. Again, I'm not going to list them all. There are too many, and has also appeared with the Wooster Group and other groups. I've lost where I even are in this ginormous bio, but I think you get it, folks. Paul is great. Welcome,
And
Paul.
in sixth grade, I was in our town.
Oh no, and now you've frozen on that incredible credit. There you are. You're back.
I'm back. Did I freeze?
You did.
You froze. We have crappy internet
Yeah,
here.
I'm sorry.
Where
So I
we're-
should say that Paul and Annie are at Time and Space Limited, where Paul will be performing tomorrow night. If you're in the Hudson, New York area, do not miss it. One night only. This work in progress, a showing of the work, which will premiere ultimately at the Chocolate Factory. But here's your chance to see it now. And I will tell you, I've just seen little bits and overheard bits when Paul's been rehearsing above me, below me, in other rooms here at the Trust, and it's pretty spectacular. It's really just going to be a great, great, great evening. And Paul will also do a little bit of John Cage Shuffle tomorrow night, I think.
True,
Now that
true.
you've told everyone you will.
Thomas.
Okay, so why don't we actually, since we've mentioned, why don't we start with John Cage Shuffle? Um, I'm tempted to almost not say anything, but let's just say that obviously you are dancing and you're doing movement choreographed by Annie, yeah. And you're reciting or performing a bit of a work by John Cage, Indeterminacy, as it's commonly known, as a longer title, but which is made up of a series of short stories, all to be read within 1 minute. And I think we'll just watch it and then we'll give everyone what is the remarkable twist, and they'll realize just how absolutely mind-bogglingly amazing it is that you were able to do this, pull this off. So I'm now going to share screen, and that's just about 3 minutes, a little bit, some, I guess three of the stories, maybe a little bit more of the short stories, of which there are many, 1 minute long short stories of John Cage Shuffle.
The audio is pretty rough there, I think. Am I right?
Well, I should say, when we post the video that we're recording right now later, I'll include a link to that excerpt online so that people can enjoy it again. So Paul, I'll just say that when that work is performed as Indeterminacy, each story is on a card, on a file card, which can be shuffled, and so they're always read in a different order. And when it's done with the Cunningham choreography, the choreography that Cunningham created is fixed, but the stories, of course, change. So maybe tell us a little bit about how John Cage Shuffle works, and then we'll just talk about what happens because of that. Oh no, we're having freezing again. I hope we can get them back. Well, I will speak a bit about John Cage Shuffle. I think I'm still on camera. So Annie B has created choreography that remains fixed for the length of the whole performance. Which stories Paul will be reciting, and he has John Cage reciting them in his ear. There's Paul coming back. Each story on a separate track on it, like in an iPhone, and it's being shuffled. So he doesn't know what story is going to come up when he does it. And Paul then has to just recite whatever he's hearing in his ear, but remain doing the choreography that's already fixed. So as much as you saw, Paul, do we have you back? I think I have to unmute you. Hold on a moment. There you are. Okay.
Hi. Yeah.
There we are. So Paul, I started to talk a little bit about it.
No, I gather. I'm glad you kept going because I was.
Maybe you can talk about what you're doing and what's in your ear. And then we can think about what happens, the effect.
Yeah. So as Jeffrey says, the stories are coming up in random order, and I just speak them as I hear them. But at the same time, I'm doing a movement score, which is not random. It's set, and I do it exactly the same every time. So each performance is different because I'm saying different words in relation to different parts of the movement. It's the best I can explain it.
I think that's it. And I think what's so beautiful about it is it's such a gorgeous expression of what indeterminacy, the magic of indeterminacy, which is to say, there are elements that are fixed here, but the piece is never the same really twice, except there's some amazing, somehow everything comes out the same as before, but that would never happen. But
Right.
we're storytelling creatures. And so even though you're doing movement that is not really choreography of that story, it looks like it is choreographed of the story. We saw that in the little excerpts here, tiptoeing. There were so many things that seemed to be, Annie having come up with a movement for exactly what you're saying, but in fact, it's indeterminate.
Right. And I do find that it expresses in a very immediate, visceral way an idea of Cage's about the unarguable relationship of everything to everything.
Yeah, he famously said all answers are answers to all questions. I think, they can be if you take that how you might interpret it is something else, but that every answer can be an answer to virtually any question. And it really demonstrates so wonderfully, Cage said, just because I use chance doesn't mean I don't make choices. So it's a carefully planned work. There are many, many choices, right? But then exactly how it will come out is you're accepting the chance. And that's the difference of chance and random, which are very, very different things. So there's
World
nothing random
difference.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Annie, I'm curious, maybe I'll ask you how you went about choreographing this work.
Oh, well, this choreography is
Oh no, we're having internet challenges. Speaking of indeterminacy, sometimes internet goes away. We'll hope to have them back in a moment. Oh, it is a challenge.
from years and years of pieces, and he strung them together in random order. There was no chance operation for it. But then, and also, there's material in there that's not from our company, but also from singers that I have choreographed for. Some St. Vincent stuff in there, some, various stuff. And then he went about the hard task of learning it, which took hours every day to practice it for years, because it's about an hour of material, geography, and it, as Paul said, it never changes. But the challenge is, okay, sure, learn that, but now also be able to do, two things at once, as
Yeah,
here
it's a feat of
express the
mind-body
story.
separation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
took
it's
an
really.
enormous, enormous amount of practice.
And I
But
remember. Go ahead,
um,
Paul.
well, and a thing I discovered was you get to a point where you can say things that are coming into your ear while you do the movement, but then you got to get to the next level where you're actually communicating which is much more than just saying the word sequence of words that comprise the story. You have to communicate it through the movement. I mean, guys, and the viewer is looking at movement that isn't naturalistic, really related to the story, so that really has to be lifted quite strongly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
The
you managed to do it in a way that it really feels like you are through movement illustrating each story, even though the movement's the movement, and the story
Yeah,
is the story.
Well, movement, I mean, I think movement itself is a great response to that famous Cage quote that you said, because movement is so flexible that
Yeah,
it almost always serves the function that you're looking for.
right. And that's, when I mean, occasionally this, but when one does sort of give themselves over to these sort of chance procedures, magical things can happen. His goal was to remove the ego, but he still did that having made choices about what might come out. But he accepts whatever comes out. In the same way that Paul, you have to accept what comes through the shuffling of the stories, and then you have to do the movement that's been created already. But while doing it, you have to embody it in such a way that expresses what you are forced to say at that moment, which is
Yeah,
really
right. And also for how can I say it? Not easily, you couldn't easily connect. The effort to make a connection or to acknowledge disconnection puts the audience in a certain frame of mind. The relationship of the audience and the material is so strong. And I just think it might be true, and maybe you'd be the person that would know if this is true, that when Paul was just talking about his effort to really express the story, to communicate the story with like a really intense clarity of narrative, I think that's unusual in the tradition of Cage's textual works. They were typically spoken very flat, and Paul doesn't do that. I mean, that's his choice, it's his piece, but I do think that makes the piece different. It's
it
warmer,
does.
even
Yeah.
though it's challenging for the
Yeah,
audience.
that's absolutely true.
It's warmer.
Absolutely true. I mean, Cage's
It's
goal was
funny.
non-intention, non-expression, it might be fair to say, with a lot of Cage. He's not trying to make you feel something. He doesn't have a goal of the recipient feeling something. But that doesn't mean that other people's work can't do that. So I love Cage Shuffle. It just works so beautifully, and it's certainly very Cagean, even though the goals might be a little different, you know, and it's just such great fun. And I don't know if you guys are frozen for everyone else or just for me, but you have now frozen again. Oh, I think you're coming back. Are you back, Paul? Have we got you back? I've got your back. I'm not sure if you're back though. Okay, I'm just going to get you unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now better than the ads. I'm so sorry we're having these challenges. I should
I
say
know.
Annie and Paul, we're going to go with it. Annie and Paul are in Time and Space Limited right now in a small screening room. Paul will be in a large theater tomorrow night. And because of where they are, which was a space available right now, the internet just apparently is challenging. So we're gonna do our best. But while you are perhaps frozen again, maybe not. You're frozen for me, but let's see if we get you back in a moment.
You did.
Oh,
You
there you
got me
are.
back. God, this,
Back.
yes.
Okay.
Oy
Okay.
vey.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is a way to see who really likes us.
Exactly, exactly. Talk about indeterminacy. This is it in action. We ask questions, we accept the answers. Here we are. Let me ask either both of you. I want to back up and just talk just a bit about Big Dance Theater and how Big Dance Theater approaches works, particularly that utilize pre-existing materials. I've seen so many wonderful things based on known things that then you do absolutely unpredictable things with they're always wonderful. And of course, tomorrow night we're going to hear a gorgeous text by Anne Carson, who's also here. Don't be nervous. And you've worked with him for a while. But in general, how does big dance theater start? Do you tend to start with like the literary object, let's say, or does that come along? What's usually the
I think, and maybe it's a little like Cage Shuffle in that one sense, I think we tend to start with movement.
Mm,
Or I think when I think of the big dance pieces, I think we start with dances. It's a
yeah,
way to be in the room and have something be full. And then an advantage of doing that, starting with dance also is it's bound to throw you off of any preconception you might have of what this is going to be and how you're going to go about it. And, all those plans that one has can't help not have that often are a constraint rather than a liberation. and a dance will throw you in some other direction where you go about it in a way other than the way you initially anticipated, and that's a great benefit.
And when you're working on a new work, I love hearing that it starts with movement, sort of, with nonverbal expression, and then that may perhaps suggest a text you pull in or a part of history or an area. But so I've seen many things that have many people in them. So at what point are you inviting others such that you know how many people are in the piece, simply put?
I think we usually start with the whole group, It's, yeah, I mean, actually, a recent instance where that was not the case was, Cage Shuffle is a solo. And the reason I was able to work on it for a year to be able to move like that and tell the stories randomly, blah, 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 was because it was a great pleasure to be alone making work, because I had spent the prior 20 years working in a group. So to work alone meant no organizing, rehearsal. You just stand up and work whenever you want to. So being alone was a great pleasure. And then this next piece, the piece that started out as a solo. But so it's an instance where I started by myself, but there's an incredibly compelling creature, person, nymph, being named Alcmene, who enters the world of the piece. And we have singers from the What to Wear opera just could seem to me manifest a character who I encountered in the story, and I wanted her to be manifest. So now it's a piece that has two people in it. I think what we tend to try to do is let the material tell us what it needs. And in this case, it needed another performer.
Right, right. And is it typical with you guys? So Paul, I know you did some things with the Worcester group, and they're famous or notorious for developing works over years, revisiting them, revisiting. Do you have a similar process?
We have
Instead of
done
piecing
some.
them instead.
What would you say, Anne?
Yes, definitely. Years.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, we incubated for years alone. We bring people in. It takes, the typical rehearsal period for us could be 10 to 13 to 15 weeks, spread out over time. Oh yeah, it's a very extended process.
And so now let's talk a little bit about the work that some of us will get to see tomorrow night. I wish everyone on Zoom could be there tomorrow night. But it started with this wonderful text by Anne Carson.
Yes.
And then many things have changed even over the past couple of days. I mean, I'm aware of many things, but maybe you could talk a bit about the genesis of where it started to just where it might be now. We don't want to give away too much.
Yes. Well, it took me quite a while, it's oddly, living with the piece before I appreciated the first sentence. And the first sentence is, this is a lecture on skywriting. And finally, it sunk in that it's a lecture. So I have a screen, and I have slides, and I have a clicker and a podium. And I think it's a great way to start. I think it's because of the magnificent breadth of the material. It's a lecture that, to me, refuses to remain a lecture, start to finish. It feels to me like there's so much life in it that it has to, the ultimately, the screen, for example, where the slides that hold the slides it's anyway, it's going to explode out into a whole universe because it can't not. Again, the material is asking for things, and I try to be receptive, but to that. But damn, what did I want to say about it? Oh yes, but what we will see tomorrow night is the base level, the baseline, the foundation. Because I'm in a first draft phase. So tomorrow night's showing will be a kind of a lecture. I mean, it'll be the words of the text of the piece in lecture form. Yeah, yeah. So that's what it'll be for those that find it interesting. They might want to stay with it and see what this lecture ultimately evolves into.
You know, the idea of a lecture as performance, which of course is part of Cage history, is a number of pieces that are on the one level lectures, but also scores. They're performed, they're timed frequently. And of course you did the Susan Bocanegra piece, which was a
Lecture.
direct lecture. But what strikes me right away about lecture as performance is that a lecture requires an audience. So even if the audience isn't saying anything, there's a sort of participatory aspect that's a little different than a play in the
That
traditional.
is such a good point, and I'm literally, because you're saying that, I'm realizing that that's like Cage Shuffle, I'm very much talking to the audience very directly. And I'm realizing that, and you're right, that because it's established that it's a lecture, it's a discourse very directly with the audience, as opposed to any kind of fourth wall quality. And yet, where this material goes is way past what would actually transpire in a lecture hall. So, but nonetheless, you're absolutely right that I seem to be very persistently connected to that idea of let's just talk directly to one another, even if I'm doing all the talking. What else is new?
And I will say too, and again, if this has disappeared, you'll let me know. But a little bit that I saw when you were here is a dance, is a pure movement section. So of course, in a lecture, one would probably not go into a dance number
That's
generally.
right.
But while you're doing that dance, we hear, and you're going to remind me who the vocalist is, but we hear some beautiful vocals that are sort of riffing on John Cage's very, very beautiful song, which originally has a text from Finnegan's Wake, The Wonderful Widow of 18 Springs.
Mm.
So I hope that's still there. It was just so beautiful what I saw.
Her, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. We can say more about that.
No, yeah, her singing is in. I mean, her her vocalizing is in.
He is singing that actually, and Paul is dancing, but probably not tomorrow because she won't be there.
Right, right.
He'll be
For
in the
real. And
piece. Yeah,
tell us
yeah.
who she is because we have not yet uttered her name. Remind us who's
Oh,
singing.
Hi, Ting.
her name is Hai Ting Chin.
I think she, yes.
She's a pretty well known singer in New York. I know you know her work, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And I gathered through Annie that she's worked with Robert Wilson, and she's just a wonderful performer.
No, it's a magical part of the production. And I should say what I love, and I think it's a through line to a lot of your work. What I love about The Wonderful Widow of 18 Springs, among other things, is that folks who hear it for the first time, it's just very beautiful, often don't realize that there are only three pitches. It's so minimal and yet so unbelievably expressive with only three pitches being sung. And so much of your work will play with a limited, in the best way, movement vocabulary, so that the magic of repetition is, I think, a lot of your practice, if that's fair to say. Altered repetition or recontextualizing repeats.
Yeah, what would you say to that,
I mean,
Annie?
I would say that if you're speaking formally, that there is a lot of that I do use forms that involve repetition. Yeah.
Could you say a little more about just why there's repetition? I mean, why you might play with that?
I mean, I worked a lot with poetic form, turning poetic forms into the forms of dances. And if you just study like the 15 most well-known poetic forms in the history of poetry, which I'm sure you know, repetition is one of the major components. And as each time, well, as there is no such thing as repetition.
Right.
And that's the fact.
And I think we're in another frozen moment. So I will say something more about repetition.
Did we freeze?
There you are. There you
There
are.
you are.
We're back.
You're back.
We really are doing a
Well,
case.
we were demonstrating, we were repeating a still moment, an expression of
Yes,
silence.
there you go.
I'm going
Yeah.
to suggest a little game for all those watching at home. Whenever the screen freezes, you are to move. But repetition is also important in certain works of Cage as well. And certainly early in life, he was very enamored of Gertrude Stein, who famously was repetitive and well understood that there's really no such thing as repetition.
And yeah, and she actually, I think, was the first person that said that. Um, she, it's just rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. She is a continually blooming flower, the most pungent, reddest flower in the history of all flowers, because in her hands, she makes it the use of repetition as an expressive tool to show that we're always in the moment. And in each moment, Rose is Rose. And now Rose, well, she was a person. I was just using a metaphor there, but is more Rose, or Rose is different, but Rose is continually Rose. She's never the same Rose as she was yesterday, nor are you.
Yeah, and that repetition, a rose is never rosier than a rose is a rose is a rose. I think Stein famously said, "I know people don't say is a," but that line made, I forgot if she said the rose redder or smell sweeter than it
Yeah,
had
yeah,
in English poetry in several hundred years, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes, well, you know this well, but tiny gestures or simple things like repetition can accumulate meaning in remarkable ways.
yeah.
So, Paul, let me ask you more about this piece, just how it has been developing. It did start out originally, you were going to conclude with a performance of Cage's Water Walk, which maybe you'll do sometime, would be wonderful. But we have still plenty of Cage in there, but it's changed into something else. Maybe talk about some of the transformations as you've had the opportunity to just spend time working on it, mostly alone.
Yes, yes. Well, I could go back a step. Um, I'm very enamored of Anne's work as something to speak. It's challenging in the best sense to speak it because it's very dense, but it's very seductive and luscious. And so
And
once
hilarious.
and hilarious humor. I mean, so once I started looking at Anne's work and got some good tips on which of her work to look at from her, a story called The Visitors was initially what I was very involved with. And I was at McDowell this summer, and and a tub of water and all kinds of objects that are not traditionally considered instruments, and you put them in a very precise position and you make sound with them. And it has a score like a regular piece of music, and it's a precisely 3-minute piece of music. So I was able to speak the visitors while setting up Water Walk. And then after the visitors was completed, I performed Water Walk. So it was quite perfect. But then I came upon this other story of Anne's in the same book, which I can't recommend enough to all listeners, called Wrong Norma, collection of Anne's writings. And this story is called A Lecture on Skywriting. And it grabbed me so much that I'm putting more focus on that. And I'm letting Water Walk sit to the side. But Cage continues to follow. Just for example, there is a section of Lecture on Skywriting, which is a piece of writing I would call a poem. And I initially encountered this poem that's in the story as a standalone poem, not in the context of the story. And its original title is Each Day a Salvation, John Cage. Then I find this piece of writing is incorporated into the lecture on skywriting. So Cage's things related to Cage seem to have still sticking to me. And so there's there's references to Cage in this piece, and I'm wandering and meandering in what I'm telling you, because I think I'm in a phase where I'm so inside of something that I'm not able to have the distance to talk about it in that cogent a way. So I don't know if I answered your question or just made a lot of sounds.
I think you did both, which is what you can hope for. And I do want to mention, I want to do another shout out because I don't think I mentioned it in the bios. The two of you most recently reconstructed Richard Foreman work, an opera of a Richard Foreman play that was quite, again, I think quite the feat to pull off. And I mentioned Moostergroup before. I think Foreman is probably another important figure
Huge.
for you guys, and certainly for me too. I worked for him many years ago, so important for me.
Amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah. 35 years ago, I was 3. I was a toddler worker, as many of us were. But maybe I could ask the two of you just to say a little bit about maybe Foreman and also doing What to Wear and maybe what that process was like, because I think that's a little different. You know, was a pre-existing work that you then wanted to bring back because you loved it. And maybe just talk about that work.
Right. There was only one thing, as I speak, and then I'll want to know your thought about it, Annie. There's one thing about What to Wear that actually did remind me of Cage Shuffle, which is once I figured out that I had to learn all this movement and learn how to speak these stories, there's a ton of just work that has to be done, nothing fancy. Just kill yourself over this movement for a long time till you learn it. And with the Foreman opera, there was a video of this original opera that Foreman designed, directed, and wrote the libretto. And Annie came onto it at a later phase, but I had to just sit with this video and learn every movement in it. So it was what I guess you could call it drudgery. I don't think of it as drudgery. I find that those kind of like insane tasks have a kind of grounding effect that I'm quite that's comforting or does something very helpful. So there was a sort of forensic process of learning all the movement. Then suddenly there are people in the room to teach it to, many of whom were not born when Foreman was making his work. And so this act of drudgery became quite joyous, because to see somebody 21, 22, 23 embody this movement and get so enduringly enamored of what they're doing made me just feel like something's flowing from a prior era through these people, and I wept when I watched them do it in rehearsal. Annie.
Just gonna move this a little. Yeah, as Paul said, I came later in the process and we had been big Richard Foreman fans, but we made the decision not to change anything if possible. And it was going to be a direct reconstruction. And out of respect, not because Richard suggested that. In fact, he said, do whatever you want to it. But I told him, like, I have two favorite choreographers, and they're you and Balanchine. And he was like, okay. But he trusted us. So when we actually started working on it, and Paul did the grunt work, as he said, I learned something about Foreman that I just could never have learned two things, by just watching him, which I had watched a lot of his work. It was sort of a yearly pilgrimage when he had his own theater, was to go see whatever he was making. His choreography is really brilliant, and not just to the naked eye, but also it's constructed so in such a complicated fashion. You don't step on the one, you step on the two. There's maybe often in that opera 3 or 4 different sections of choreography happening simultaneously, in a way that it took 3 and 4 of us to put together with this group of performers. There was a level of complexity to it and of musicality to it that was a big surprise. Secondly, because when you're just in the audience, you see something once, at least me, I don't know about you all, there's a kind of blissful confusion when something's really brilliant. And you just like, but since we were on the other side of it, we got to really see how it's made. The other thing about the piece that was mind-blowing was, at least in this work, I had always thought of Richard's work very much in the world of Foreman, Wilson, that whole period. It's just not. He was doing something extremely different than Cage, especially than Cage and Cunningham. It's much, much warmer. It's much more about his pain. And it's very Jewish, and it's very shtetl. That I sort of knew and had actually written about already, but it's got a lot of Yiddish theater in it. I felt that as an audience, but I didn't feel how personal it was until I actually was on the inside of it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what's so remarkable about his work, and maybe what, Berlin Cabaret is to Wilson, Shtetl Yiddish theater is to Foreman, perhaps, but is that you
Yeah.
have what on the surface may seem ridiculous, even if you do understand that it's very specific, and yet you get to, for me at least, very real human emotion
Yes.
arrived at somehow not through mimesis in the traditional sense. It's quite a feat.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, well put.
And I think in your own work too, which is also very, very different, I mean, absolutely unique, but you often have movement that has this amazing expressive quality, but that's not, Dying Swan. It's a different kind of specificity that will connect to the viewer in a way that is not, simple illustration, which
Yeah,
where so much other work by others, let's just say, can fall flat because it attempts to simply imitate or show in a very sort of obvious way.
yeah,
It's a very different approach. And I like that the way you're developing things. I mean, for me, hearing that you start with movement and then text comes in later is really revelatory in the work you've been doing. Can I ask if you even know what's on the horizon? Is there some larger work that you're starting to contemplate that might be based on something you can tell us about, and understanding that that may change, but
Me?
either of you, but
Oh, because Paul is working on this.
yeah.
That's his future for quite a while. Yeah, Big Dance. We are working on a piece called The Oath, and it will be at BAM about probably exactly a year from now at the Harvey. And it's a piece of choreography. It has text in it, but it's just me making it this
Hmm.
time.
Oh, and you've frozen again for us. I'll say that. Annie, I see that you're on the calendar for MPAC, which is for those in upstate New York. Is that, maybe you'll come back by the time I finish this question. Is that a part of the development of the oath, or perhaps it's totally different?
And
You are right on cue. Did
did,
you hear my question? I don't know.
no, what was it?
No, okay. So you've mentioned this work, The Oath, being developed for BEM for next year. And I
Yes.
was saying that I just saw that you're on the calendar for MPAC, which is up here in upstate New
Oh,
York,
yeah.
that
That's
you're
a
doing
film.
later in April. So is that a
Yeah.
different work, or part of
It's
what we'll develop?
it's very much part of it. It's a film that we did with Alla Kovkin, a big dance project that of the first 20 minutes of what will be a large scale live work. Yeah. And the film is very much its own thing, though. So it's the same as the oath, the short oath, but it's very filmic. And the most important thing for me when I was turning it into a film, and it's our first film, so it was experiment, was to choreograph in a world of color. So it looks like there's no walls, there's no corners, there's no edges. It's just this saturated color. It starts in yellow, it moves into red, green, and eventually blue, and then into whiteness.
Well, I can't wait to see it. Um, we have just a little time left. I don't know if there's something you want to share with all of us, or I can always come up
um,
with a question.
there
Yeah.
is a wonderful Irish company called Pan, Pan, and they're often in New York. And I met up with them. Oh, that's not interesting. Anyway, I'm going to go over to Ireland in the fall and work on a version, which will be very much not the original version because of the way they work, but a version of Long Day's Journey. Uh, and so I guess I mentioned that by way of saying, if anyone listening, if you see, oh, this company called Pan is around, and they often are, they work often in New York, I really recommend that you see them. They're magnificently inventive and quite unique
Yeah, they're great.
aesthetically.
And Long Day's Journey is so unlike anything else in your list. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, there was a Worcester group, Long Day's Journey,
Yeah.
but I remember it quite kind of at once vaguely and distinctly. Vaguely because there was a lot of wild activity, and when that wild activity finally settled, they spoke the last two lines of the play.
Hmm.
Last line, and then I met James Tyrone and was happy for a while. And it was glorious.
Fantastic. I love the idea of it being both vague and specific. That seems like an ultimate goal we should all try to achieve. And maybe with that, I think I'm going to thank Andy Parson and Paul Lazar for joining us today through all of the Wi-Fi challenges.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you for hanging in there with the Wi-Fi challenge.
Really.
There you are. For the video, when I remove the frozen cameras, this will be a 2.5 minute discussion. So, but it's been really great, and
Thank you
it's
so
been so
much, Jeff.
fabulous having you guys here, and can't wait till tomorrow night, and then hopefully seeing where this ends up. I know we can't know, and that's the place we all want to be in. We want to be present. Next, see what comes next. So, thank you both, and everyone out there. Join us next month. Will be a tribute to Jackson McClough, a wonderful poet who studied with Cage, then applied Cage's chance procedures to poetry, and then in turn influenced John Cage. So there's a wonderful symbiotic relationship there that we'll be celebrating for Poetry Month, April. And until then, everyone stay present. Thank
If
you.
I could just chime in with one comment, which is the reason this is happening, the reason I'm here, the development of this work was Jeffrey's openness to bringing me up, and I'm so indebted because it's just been a gloriously fertile time. So I want to thank you deeply.
Oh, well, it's truly been my pleasure, our pleasure to have any hand in this work's development is really thrilling. And also a longtime Anne Carson fan. I was going to say Anne, if I'm not sure if she's even still here, but I first saw Anne read in Vancouver and was just a devotee for life a number of years ago. She's, I can't say a national treasure because she's Canadian, but she's a North American treasure. Lucky her, she's Canadian. So thank you all. Hope to see everyone in a month, and perhaps some of